Welcome back. And as we promised, we have a great discussion lined up for you today. We want to introduce you to the people who are on set with us today. This is our first attempt of a town hall session, or version of it, we should say. And we have selected representatives from different fields to be able to come in and field questions directly to Minister of Foreign Affairs, Honorable Wilfred Elrington, who's with us this morning. Good morning. Good morning. He is joined by Ambassador Alexis Rosado, Belize's ambassador to Guatemala.
Good morning.
And you gentlemen have the lovely pleasure of being able to answer questions, concerns directly from our representatives. Our representatives this morning will start on this end. We have the young people represented. Joining us is Dominique Noralez, the president of the National Youth Council. Next to her, we have representing the churches, Canon Leroy Flowers. And we have Dr. Fernando Cuellar, who has his own experience in studying in Guatemala. And we have Doreth Obermayer Cayetano, who is the president of the Public Service Union. And on the other side, we have education representative, Cesar Ross, a lecturer in history at the University of Belize. We have third-party representative, Paul Morgan, and we have business representative, Kay Menzies. Good morning, welcome. Good morning. And thank you all for being our guinea pigs. So, as a part of the conversation, it's really important for us to set the backdrop. And I think it's only responsible for us to be able to have Minister Elrington and Ambassador Rosado take the opportunity to set the backdrop on this issue before we move into the question and answers. So let me give you that opportunity at this time.
Good. Good morning everyone. Good morning Belize TV listeners, everybody. We have a very, very important decision to make. An appointment with history on the 10th of April 2019. The date has been set. Belizeans will be asked to decide yes or no on the question of whether the Guatemalan claim to Belize should be finally resolved at the International Court of Justice. Now, the idea of the International Court of Justice is not new. The first time the British presented it to Guatemala as an option was in 1937. Guatemala rejected it. When the International Court of Justice was formed in 1945, 46, the British again proposed to the Guatemalans, let's settle our differences at the International Court of Justice. Guatemala refused. That was maintained at the ICJ for a period of 10 years until 1956, after which we got into a whole series of other efforts outside of a juridical process. It involved mediation, negotiation, facilitation, you name it, everything that the Charter of the United Nations provides for the peaceful settlement of disputes has been tried. In 2008, finally we get Guatemala to agree to submit their claim to the International Court of Justice for it to be resolved on the basis of international law. This provides an opportunity which we tried to pursue starting in 1937. So Belizeans now are being asked to decide whether we should submit it to the ICJ because Guatemala has already done their part. They signed on to the special agreement in 2008 and they put that to their people in a national referendum last April. So now it is Belize's turn to put it to the people to decide. And the important thing from where I sit heading the referendum education and awareness process, from where we sit, our aim is to make sure that the Belizeans understand the issues and know the facts so that on April 10th, 2019, when they go to the ballot box, they will be able to take a decision based on the full knowledge of the issue, on the full knowledge of the facts, and they will be asked to vote on their conscience, on their good conscience for what they think is the best and good for this country. And I think I welcome this opportunity that we have. We will be having a lot more of these opportunities across the country, but it's great to be here with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Rosado. Now, before we get started, let's just do a quick poll, a live poll. How many of you have firmly decided how you will vote in the referendum next April? Okay, great. I won't ask you how you're voting, but we'll ask the question. It's just great to know. So you are still undecided. Okay, that's great. So I want to start the conversation off with just giving you the opportunity to ask the most burning question from the start. And we're going to be very flexible with this, but please be conscious of time because we do have a number of representatives here. So if you can get as quickly to the question as possible, we'd appreciate that. Yeah.
Okay, good morning, Ambassador. Good morning, Minister.
Good morning.
And good morning, panelists and the wider Belize public as such. My first question as an educator is about that aspect there, the education process as such. And as you said, we have less than a year to get Belizeans prepared for this process as such. I remember the educational process started in 2013, but that referendum was shelved at that point in time. Given the short amount of time, and we're not only talking about formal, but even the informal educational process, how are we going to get the message, get this educational process to hit all the areas that we need to hit to get an informed population as such? And particularly, I want to add to that, like a second question is the making sure that there's a balance, making sure that there are different people representing different positions of the thought process or the decision process in that public education campaign as such.
Well, you want to? In respect of the public awareness campaign, I have to bear in mind that the objective is to put out the facts, put out the realities of the history, of the truth of the situation. My charge is not to go out there and encourage people to vote yes or no. My charge, in terms of the referendum unit, is and has been to let the people have the facts, to know the truth. Now, I have had occasions to say, look, if the facts lead you to a certain decision, then that is your decision. But we have not and will not be promoting yes, and we have not been doing that so far. The politicians can do it. The minister, I'm sure, will be the first to tell you he thinks that the right thing to do is a certain way. But that is not my role, not as a public education campaign. So the question about whether we'll have equal opportunities for yes or no, we will, to the extent we can, have open panels, open discussions, debates, yes, in the universities. But the important thing is that the people get the truth. And when people are promoting things that are not true, we will call it out. That is part of our responsibility as well. How we get it out there, occasions like this, we have been responding to invitations all over the country, and we will continue doing so. What we need to do is to get multipliers, people who can also do the same thing all over the country. We need to train people, and those who are already knowledgeable of the subject, try to get them in order to help us in the process. But it's not only a referendum unit job, you know. It is a job for all of us. All Belizeans have their own duty, responsibility as a citizen of this country to inform themselves. We will, to the extent possible, put out all information there. We will, to the extent possible, come to wherever you want us to come to discuss the subject. But we do need partners. We have a referendum commission that we're looking to activate. That is comprised of the membership base, have representatives from a whole cross-section of civil society. We want to activate them, ask them to join us in this whole effort. But it is something for all Belizeans to be involved.
Would you concede? Could I just add something? that really this is the information age. Never in the history of the world has there been so many media by which people get out information. Facebook, Google, you name it, it exists, particularly for the young people, so that there is no excuse for any single Belizean who is literate not to be informed on it, because any information you need to find, anything at all on this matter, can be found simply by going to Google. Just Google itself. So there is no excuse for any Belizean not to know. And those of us who are in leadership positions should access that kind of media and disseminate information. That's our obligation as citizens and patriots.
Let's move over to the next. You have your
This morning, my fellow Belizeans, somehow that have a different tone these days. I think that what was said just now about this educational campaign that you said is, we use fancy words, but we have broke it down, could be very disingenuous, no? I think we fool people when we call it education campaign, because I'm hearing from both political parties already trying to sway people that are not education, that are brainwashing. UDP, they say right now, I think we for vote yes. PUP, I mean, in the history of this country, when one says something, the next one has said absolutely the opposite, just for some that they have an opinion. So I don't say that one they say something, the other thing they say something. That shouldn't be. The leader should say, this is the facts. Mr. Minister said just now, go to Google. He talked about literate people. We have illiterate people. We get informal education, informal information. Figure out a way how to access these masses. Okay? I don't think Bambalipan George Street right now or Eve Street, they try Google thing. We have to figure out a way how to. I broke it down, Ambassador. No go to there, fancy hotels and what have you, and maybe use the media. Figure out better ways to get to the informal education people. But it's very fooling to say that this is our educational campaign. When we don't hear from our leaders, I think we should vote this way. Okay? The next thing you brought up about this time frame, I think 1 year way too short. I don't know what the urgency now. You give a good historical 1936 and 45. I would have gone further. We did on this thing for the past 200 years. What now that the urgency for hurry get this thing done? Is there something we are not hearing from you guys that by next year we have to do it? I'm going to ask Ms. K just now, I just want to wrap up in 30 seconds.
Okay. Yes.
I don't think this Guatemala issue has harmed or affected our economic social development. Our numbers, as it's measured, how good we're in the world standing, not because of the Guatemala claim. I don't hear nobody say, I don't hear no commercial development banks say, I know I invest. You hear the occasional thing, maybe the chateros go crash because they got better field, but I don't hear no big stumbling blocks about economic development. The big stumbling block about this country development, guys, the corruption, misuse of money from the two sides. So make we address that first before we talk about Guatemala.
So let me pull the question out of that, which is why now? Why the urgency?
Could I just respond?
Yes.
It has been going on since 1937. As a matter of fact, the claim has been around for in excess of 100 years. It's not a question of why now. The question is why not now? The problem is every day on the media you hear people complaining that the Guatemalans are interfering with us in the Sarstoon. Guatemalans are cutting down the chate, cutting down the mahogany. They are pillaging the ruins. They are stealing the fish out of the seas. They are holding down our people. What do we do to stop it? The initiative on the part of the British in 1937 with a view to having it resolved by the court was a view to preventing these same things from happening. And that is how you deal with issues. Clearly, I find it absurd to suggest that a matter that has been going on for over 100 years is being viewed in the light of urgency now, when in fact you finally get a solution. And actually, it was 2008 when we agreed to go to the ICJ. This is 10 years later, almost. So there's no urgency. It's a kind of slowness that is killing Belize in terms of absence of development, because people are afraid to come and invest in the country. we are spending monies which we can ill afford because of the Guatemalan issue. If we get it behind us, we will be in a much better position to, in fact, advance the agenda and the development of the country. So it's not a question of it's being rushed now. And finally, it's not an issue that we can deal with unilaterally. It can only be resolved by bilateral action. So we can determine when we want to resolve it. Fortunately, and against all odds, we got the Guatemalans to agree finally in 2008 to go to the ICJ. Nobody thought that would have happened. Now that it has happened, we need to move forward.
Can I just quickly respond to the public awareness
Yes.
campaign? Some people may think it's a propaganda thing. Clearly you do. And as I said, we will not apologize for telling you the truth of history and giving you the facts. We cannot make apologies for that.
Well, then why
But
the
if you take it,
suggestion of
if you take it as a propaganda awareness, then
That's
I
how
can't
it
help
could
you with
needs
that.
to be interpreted,
Yeah,
Ambassador,
yeah.
because
Yeah.
I am hearing from the leaders of the political parties, this is how I am thinking we should vote. And this is actually, I heard that one said that they will encourage the voters to vote one way.
Fine, and that is their
Okay.
right. You, I'm sure, could you
Their
have
right,
the right to
their
tell
right
people to do
is
other
to
things.
do things properly.
Fine.
Could I just say,
But
though,
one
that
more
we
thing,
had-
one more thing,
Yeah.
just in terms of
Why
ha-
haven't we seen
having
a
these
task
things?
force, a commission, bipartisan to address this thing?
I think I said that we're going to have a referendum.
Not the referendum, the Guatemala issue,
The referendum commission is about the Guatemala issue.
part of it, sir.
So go
I'm
ahead,
not too
Minister.
sure
Go
you
ahead, Minister.
understand.
What I'm saying is that all you have to do is to know the history. The identical thing you see working out here in Belize now is the identical process that was pursued by the British when they're dealing with the Brexit referendum. The identical process that was used by the Scots when they're dealing with the referendum as to whether Scotland should disengage from England. This is how you do the political process. The government and Prime Minister Barrow could not have been clearer today. The referendum unit and the education campaign is being conducted by the referendum unit, and Alexis can go into detail with respect to that. Politicians will be free, as I am doing, to go from house to house and educate the people who are in my constituency and provide them with the materials. At the end of the day, Belizeans are not stupid. Belizeans are intelligent people, have good sense, common sense, formal education. You can't brainwash them in a few days. We are simply presenting the information to them and inviting them. You make your decision based on the materials that we are giving.
All right, we have Dominique now.
Okay, so we know that the whole issue is based on the concept of self-determination. So people get a right to determine their own destiny, yes? And we heard also that we've exhausted all the other peaceful methods of resolving this issue. So I want to know, and we heard that the Prime Minister yesterday in his press conference say that the majority of the cabinet is going for a yes, which means the majority of the government is going for a yes. So I want to know what happens if the majority of whatever percentage of Belize's electorate votes no, because I know that in the next 20, 30 years, I will be one of the persons who has to deal with whatever outcome this issue has. So I want to know what happens if we say no, what is the next step if Belize says no?
You want to answer that?
Well, what happens is that we not just stay as we are with an unresolved claim over our heads in terms of the Guatemalan claim over Belize and the problems associated with it in the border areas, Sarstoon, Chiquibul, we know that story. That remains. It is possible that it'll get worse because we have seen these things from years ago when we used to see satellite pictures showing us the canopy of the forests in Petén and Belize and in Isabel and Toledo. So we've been seeing a development of a movement, the loss of forests and a growth of people heading in our direction. When the forest disappears, the water disappears. When they cut the trees, the waters get contaminated and so forth. That will keep happening. The problem will be exacerbated just because of time and demographics and landlessness. Aside from that, Aside from that, whenever we have problems on the border, and then we run to our international partners and tell them, come and help us, because we have relied so much on the international community for our safety and security. When we go and tell them, come and help us, one of the possible reactions we will get from them is, well, you had the opportunity to settle it peacefully, and we don't know if that opportunity will remain on the table. On behalf of Guatemala, as the minister said, it takes two to tango. We don't know if we miss this opportunity, we will have it again anytime soon. Now some will say, well, it doesn't matter, we could wait another 200 years. But the problem, in our view, is getting more urgent and more pressing. I don't mean to say that we will solve the problem of the chateros and the encroachments, but by settling it at the ICJ, it will allow us to work better with our neighbors in order to manage the problem, because the problem is not just about poverty in Guatemala, poor people, peasants coming across. It's about organized criminal organizations who use these poor people to come in and cut our logwood, get our gold and the rest of it. So it's a criminal elements involved, and we need to be able to work with our neighbor.
I think a key component of what Dominique asked was just, what are the other options? If the vote is no, there will have to be a consideration of what. Yeah.
Well, it's, Assad has written extensively on it, and he has given it a lot of thought, like all the rest of us. And he has said in writing that nobody has suggested to him any other option that is open to us. Internationally, when you look around and you see what happens internationally, we have this, for example, in between Pakistan and India, you have the issue of Kashmir. You see what is happening there? Spillover in violence. You have the issue of China and Taiwan. You see what is happening there? Threat, use of violence. You have the issue in North Korea, South Korea. You see what is happening there? You see what is happening in Palestine and Israel. Incidentally, yesterday was the 70th anniversary of the partition of Palestine. It has never stopped being violent and horrendous deaths and the like. You see what happened in Russia and Ukraine. So when you look objectively at the historical consequences are as recorded in history of failure to resolve border disputes peacefully, it all suggests that the next step that is used is less than peaceful means, which we can't even contemplate here in Belize.
I think that one of the issues that our leaders, all leaders, I don't care from what angle they come from, we need to be able to be honest with ourselves and say to our Belizean nation, one, unless both parties can agree to some outcome. Presently, the only agreement we've ever had with Guatemala is the ICJ. We need to be honest with our people. What is the alternative to that? Because that is the question most people are asking. If we say no, which is all right, what is the alternative? Our leaders need to be able to say this to our people. Our leaders also need to help our people to understand what I call the diplomatic dancing that has to go on beyond the table discussion on an everyday basis, because that has implication for all of us. An example, the good doc has said that our leaders are saying, now that which is the truth is very sad for Belize, because if we recall, it was the People's United Party government who proposed, and I thought as a citizen that was a genius move. Now we aren't too certain where they are because they don't like the minister. That to me is immature as citizen of this land. How could you not want to resolve an issue because whoever is leading that department you don't like. That can't be for but this Guatemalan issue has always generated emotional fervor. I remember seeing people lining, my own relatives, my own family members lying down on the street until I evolved and understood. And it took the opposition, now the government, to say that George Rice never really want to sell out Belize. He really was singularly set for independence. But we have had this dance for so long, while if you live along the border, because that is also, I think, the people along the western border are the ones who really feel the brunt. And we can be very nice and comfortable in this part of the city or the nation, but it's those who live along that who have this fear every day and can be overwhelmed by a Guatemalan. That to me is where I think we need to help our people to better understand.
Do you have a question?
No, I just think that we need to be honest enough as leaders, no, not the average person, as leaders to tell our people the only way we're going to solve the Guatemalan is that both of us have got to agree to the outcome. Because that's what going to the ICJ is all about. Going to the United, we went there in what, 61, 67 to get, and they agreed, but then you've got to carry through the process. That's all I want to say.
Okay, so what we're going to do at this point is take a very quick break. When we come back, we resume our town hall session here on Open Your Eyes as we focus on the Belize Guatemala issue and the referendum to go to the ICJ. So please stay tuned.
For over 20 years, Great Belize Television, Channel 5, has been the leader in award-winning local programming. We have also produced some of the best video commercials, documentaries, and live events for clients countrywide. And we continue to offer high-quality production services to maximize your advertising needs for your business or organization. From concept to completion, let us help you achieve your marketing goal by producing your commercial, documentary, graphic animation, live event, or even designing your website. Using state-of-the-art equipment and experienced personnel, we can make your ideas come alive. For more information, come see us on Coney Drive or give us a call at 223-0146 or 223-7781 or email us at gbtv@vtl.net. Great Belize Productions, making great television in Belize.
When someone you love becomes a memory, the memory becomes a treasure. Channel 5 introduces the Daily Obituaries. The Daily Obituaries will broadcast all death and funeral announcements and memorials to honor your loved one's life and memories. The Daily Obituaries airs on Channel 5 prior to the evening newscast, with subsequent repeats at 10 p.m. and 12 noon the following day. It will also be placed online on our social media platforms, all for a standard package fee. Celebrate their lives and memories with Channel 5's Daily Obituaries. Honor in life and reverence in death.
And welcome back. And we are continuing with our first ever town hall session. We are joined by Honorable Wilfred Elrington, Minister of Foreign Affairs. We're joined by Ambassador Alexis Rosado. They are answering directly to questions of representatives of different sectors, and we will just keep the conversation going at this point, and we'll hear from Menzies at this time.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, gentlemen. I think a lot of this, and it has to be recognized very carefully, that a lot of the emotion out there is because of fear. Obviously, there is the risk, the very real risk in any court case that you would lose, and in this case, losing means losing half the country. In order to get to a yes vote the other day, what we saw was that Guatemala's politicians turned out for an issue that is not an issue for the wider population in Guatemala, and they said whatever it took to get a yes vote, which turned out to be a yes vote from 26% of their population. That just showed the general apathy in Guatemala, but what it also showed was the determination on the part of the politicians to get to that yes vote. The question I have for you that I think a lot of people have out there but I haven't heard answered yet is, why is Guatemala so adamant themselves on going to the ICJ? And in this case,
Okay, let's go.
Could I just seek to clarify 2 points raised by the questioner? There is no evidence at this point in time that there is a risk of us losing one half the country. I don't know where people got that from. Certainly it is not contained in the question which we are going to put before the ICJ. I don't know where they got it from. Guatemalans' claim has been to the entire country from 1859, when from the time they purported to vitiate the 1859 treaty, and that they did that on the 21st of September 1939. So let me just clarify that there is nothing that I am aware of that relates to the claim to a half the country, or that we have a risk of losing half of the country. I don't know where that came from. But secondly, what is Guatemala's interest in now getting this matter solved? Why are they so resolute? The truth, ma'am, is that from 1937, the British have been trying to get them to say yes, and they said no. This is the first time they have said yes. They resisted saying it for over 50 years. So it is not any sudden decision. It's an evolution. It's a process that evolved in Guatemala over half of a century. And they finally saw the light. And why they see the light? If you notice what is now happening between Belize and Guatemala, we're having a lot of investment coming in between the two countries, in sugar, in citrus, in commercial activity, in tourism. There is obvious benefit from having a better relationship with Belize rather than having one of enmity and antagonism. You have friendship, you do tremendous roaring investment in Belize, and you have access to CARICOM, Commonwealth, and the rest of the world. So from a business point of view, it is eminently sensible. And people who lead a nation have got to make sure that there are resources to provide for the needs of the people, especially those who can't produce for themselves. And you do that by positive, active trade. So that is perhaps what is driving it now, the need to enhance the trade so that they can provide better for their people.
So
that
Minister,
is a no-brainer, really.
So Minister, what you're saying is that the claim is not to half, the claim is to whole?
Because you see, people don't understand that if you are repudiating the 1859 treaty, which you claim was the basis upon which the
borders
countries were separated, the borders, and you seek to repudiate that, as you know as an attorney, it puts the whole country in issue. That is the situation. You should know that as an attorney. Yeah. I know that as an attorney. That's first principle. If you seek to repudiate the contract, the good point is that the British were steadfast in saying to them, that is not our view. It is not our view that you ever had ownership to the country, and the fact that you're purporting to repudiate it, we don't accept that. Take it to the court and make the court decide. And that has always been our position. We don't accept that the 1859 treaty is repudiated. We base up our country on that, on the basis of that treaty, our boundaries, you see?
A border.
But that is the issue. The issue is the whole country is at stake, and it's for that reason that the question that is being asked of the ICJ is for you to determine what part, if any, whether insular, maritime, or territorial territory, Guatemala has any right to.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. First, let me associate myself with the comments that the good doctor made. I have also shared some important information with the representative of youth that, in fact, when you're asked about what happens next, there is, in fact, a UN charter that dictates or that says what will happen. But in any case, you might have to discuss that later. I have one question now and perhaps another to come up later. Mr. Minister, I'll bring it home. Your charge has been to defend the Constitution of Belize. That's what you're paid for. This special agreement is asking the ICJ to quote-unquote determine the boundaries, and that is of Belize. Determine the boundaries, it says of the countries, but of Belize. You know, Mr. Minister, that in fact the boundaries of Belize are already stated in the Constitution. You also know that to change the boundaries of Belize, we must have a 2/3 majority in the House of Representatives. There is no other way. My question then is, as a guardian, as a champion of the Constitution, how could you sign a document that does threaten a change to our boundaries without the proper procedure to change it? How comfortable were you in signing such a document that will give a foreign court, an unpredictable court, the authority to determine our borders?
Obviously, Mr. Morgan, your understanding of the process is 100% different from my understanding of it, which I find to be very sad. The Constitution of Belize deals with the domestic law of Belize. The international law and the ICJ will deal with the international situation. And we have an international problem. The problem which we are faced with is an international one, where our neighbor is contending that Belize belongs to them. That's an international issue. And that claim was made formal, as I said, from about 21st of September 1939. It's a claim which the British took very seriously and invited the Guatemalans to have it resolved at the ICJ. Natural progression, when we became independent, we took and maintained the same position. Our government tried to negotiate it, to settle it by negotiation, but it didn't work. And so we reverted 2008 right back to the position that the British articulated for in 1937. It is not something that you can unilaterally deal with because it's an international matter. So you have to go to an international court. And all that we were doing really were following on the position that the British took in 1937. Have the international court determine what the position is. And after the international court determines what the position is, we will have to make domestic arrangements to deal with that consequence of that decision. So it's a two different type of legal regime you're dealing with. One is domestic in our constitution, but that is not the issue here because it's not a domestic matter, it's an international matter. So we have to go to the ICJ to deal with the international issue. If it were a domestic matter, we would go to the local courts. You notice this is not being dealt with in the local courts. It is being dealt with in the International Court of Justice.
Let's get the union representative. Doreth?
Good morning, Minister. Good morning, Ambassador. Good morning, Belizeans. Yeah, I have several questions. Short.
Okay.
My first one is, as it relates to the education aspect, that's basically one of our stand as unions. We need to educate our members as to whether the information provided to them or that the one, like what Minister did indicated, that it's on Google. But we go beyond that. How is it that you guys going to determine the individuals that going to be the head of these discussions are the panelists as it relates to going, I want to believe, country to country, district to district, sorry, educating our people in all cracks and corners. I haven't heard anything as it relates to the fact of reaching the villages, because we do have the voting populations within the rural communities. How do we plan to get to these individuals?
That's a good question. We have to make every effort to reach everybody. And I should say some people get upset or offended when we talk about an education process. So we even talked about it as an awareness process. But the education, we all are responsible for our own education too. Government has an obligation. We should have included this subject in the educational curriculum. But for some reason, we failed to do that over the past. But what we have to do is to get people who are willing. Most of them will have to be volunteers, give up their own time. Government can hire so many people to cover the whole country. And it's not something that the political parties will be taking on upon themselves in terms of the giving out the facts and the history and spending time like this with as much people as possible. We have to use all social media. We have to.
But is there a plan to include the villages and the?
We are developing a plan, and that's where the referendum commission I mentioned earlier will come in, because we need all the social partners possible, civil society groups and so forth.
And how will these individuals who will be giving out the information be identified? Because you don't want to just say, you know what, okay, you know, Mr. Morgan is from another party, so we're going to use him. How will you guys go about saying that, you know what, these are the individuals that we want to be able to distribute or inform our people, be it for going to the ICJ or not going to the ICJ? Because I think that is where we find it very crucial, because we don't want to be getting information from individuals who we don't know what's their credibility in giving us or providing us with this information.
Credibility is critical to the process, because we don't want people to be going out there and to begin with giving out wrong information.
Exactly.
So we have credibility is key. We will rely heavily on historians like Mr. Ross and many others who have studied the matter, dedicated their lives to studying and working on the subject. But apart from that, we will have to make sure that we don't be seen or to not even intend to crowd out the voices like Mr. Morgan and others who are clearly and consciously moving for the no vote. We have to allow space to debate, have good open debates, good open panels to discuss the issue, air everything out. So the idea is not to just go out and it'll be a one-way thing. It'll have to be inclusive, and hopefully the debate will be civil and open.
Is there a timeline in place? Because I keep on hearing you say that we will.
We're developing.
April 10th is getting here so quickly. And to be very clear, you know, Guatemala's campaign was really only 3 months. I think people don't always realize that, although it's been in their education system for so long. But do we have a timeline that we heard that after the referendum there would be a ramped up education campaign? We've not seen that. We can all agree we have not seen that. When do we see?
It depends what you mean and expect by a campaign. This is part of the campaign. This, having an open discussion like this, is a part of the campaign. Having Belizeans discuss the matter, debate the matter at their houses is part of the whole campaign, because it involves all of us. All Belizean citizens are a part of this.
But are you not
and
concerned?
to the extent possible, right now what we are doing is still going. Ambassador Leslie, for example, who used to run the referendum office for a number of years, was always busy going around the country. Clearly, it was not enough. So we need to get more people. We need to use social media. We need to use Facebook, Google, Instagram, and the rest of it.
I think part of the question is we have a limited time, and
that is our time frame.
And so the question is not only in terms of the time frame, but the structure. Who is going to be doing it? What are the phases? Are you going to be educating people first, and then going out to the villages and starting with the rural? Is there a structure, or are we still developing something to do something.
And that's
something like that.
basically where I want to go, because then at the end of the day, we're looking at April 10th, 2019. We are less than a year away from that.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing is that I continue to hear you guys mentioning Google, Instagram, Facebook, you name it. We are referring to individuals, electorate, individuals who can vote in the rural communities. They don't have half of these things that we're talking about, or probably not even 1/3. So I am very concerned as it relates to these individuals receiving the right information in order for them to be able to make the right decision.
Could I make an
And not
intervention?
one that is not being bombarded based on, you know what, a 5-10 minute discussion, and then
No,
from
clearly-
there these
clearly that's
individuals
important.
Could I make an
are
interven-
expected
could I-
to vote.
Could I make an intervention? 2 weeks ago, we addressed Rotary. A month ago, we addressed the Catholic school in San Ignacio. Yesterday, he addressed the American embassy. We should shortly be addressing some of the people in the banks. At least a year ago, we addressed the teachers' union in Cayo, Asad Schumann, and myself. We have gotten no interest or initiative from the teachers, whom we would have thought would have been the leaders to approach us and to say, how do we go about getting involved in this thing? Because the truth is, as has been adverted to earlier on, it was a responsibility, in my view, of our education department to disseminate this information, to develop your curriculum. This should have been part of our civic or history.
Social studies.
This is what was done in Guatemala. They had a Comisión de Belize and they taught their people. But we haven't got any feedback. And as I like to say to people, none of us have a greater obligation to protect and provide for the security of Belize than the other. All of us have this obligation, so that we would welcome a proposal, an initiative from the teachers union in particular, or the public union, to partner with us, because he's developing something. You heard the Prime Minister say yesterday that when he is finished with that, he has to present it to the cabinet, and then he will be engaging with the social partners. I can tell you he's finished most of what he needs to do. It is going to be presented to the cabinet, and then you are going to be approached. But clearly, we also want to have initiatives coming from your organizations, because you are the people who have access to this vast amount of people in the society.
If I could just add for clarity, though, wouldn't an education reach out be something that can be organized by ministry to ministry initiative? I mean, the Ministry of Education is responsible for the curriculum and what the teachers will do in the classroom.
Yeah.
So should it be the unions reaching out to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, or the Ministry of Foreign Affairs working with the Ministry of Education?
It should be simultaneous, because we all have this obligation. It's not a compartmentalized, segregated thing. It's a matter of the survival of the nation. And we therefore all have an obligation. It's like when a ship is in trouble, in its distress, everybody must take the initiative to rescue it. And so we ask everybody, and that's why I was so pleased this morning to see people from the youth, the clergy, medical faculty, whatever it is, because it's really a national initiative that has got to be implemented in a very serious way.
Speaking of our youth, she has a burning question we've been delaying. Go ahead.
Yeah.
So I hear the ambassador speaking of inclusivity, and I also hear you, Minister, saying that there's going to be a plan developed and then we approach partners. In my opinion, that doesn't end well, because I think to have a progressive plan to educate the people, make them aware, because you can't make a decision if you're not aware of the problem. It has to be inclusive from the beginning. So you sit, and I think this is the role of the commission that will be put together. You sit with these people from the beginning to determine a plan, because then I cannot say, oh, you give me something and then I have to give my opinion on it. Rather, if I'm involved from the beginning, then I could say, oh, I had the opportunity from the beginning to put in my part. So I think that's the approach you should take, rather than developing a plan and coming to me with it. You develop a plan with me. So I own that plan. And
You are
we all work
entirely
together. There's an inclusion.
You're entirely right, and that's part of the delay because we have to reactivate the commission. The commission was first established in 2012, I believe, and it has been meeting like once a year and the last time they met was over a year ago. So what we are doing now is contacting the membership organizations in order for them to rename or reaffirm who is their representative, and that takes a bit of time. It involves people from all over the country. But you are entirely right. You're entirely right. You can't go there and tell them this is it. So the question was, what is the plan for the public awareness campaign? We have a good idea because we had a plan back in 2012, 2013 when we were going to have the referendum. But we have to dust that up, and realities have changed, technology has changed, so we have to adapt that and put it to the people, consult with them before we finalize anything.
Now, we've spoken quite a bit about social media, and I'm glad you did because that allows me to introduce the question from online. We have quite a bit of feedback online, and it's an issue I'm sure we probably just haven't gotten to yet. And the real question we see so often from people, and our viewers are pointing out at this moment, is what is called litigation risk. You know, we hear from our representatives that this is an ironclad case, that there's no way Belize will lose. And anybody who has any court experience rarely ever goes into court thinking, I'm 100% sure I'm going to win. I'd imagine the responsibility of a lawyer is to outline to you the risks involved. What are our risks in this case?
Otherwise, it's irresponsible.
Is it, I don't think any Belizean from we're seeing here saying, I agree this is ironclad. What are our risks?
Normally, whenever anybody is contemplating legal action, you seek to engage the best lawyers possible to advise you on it. We have sought to do that. The Guatemalans have sought to do that. And in fact, all the work produced in consequence of that, the opinion given to the Guatemalans, as well as the opinion given to Belize, are public. Again, those you can find on Google. And every single one, without exception, has made the point that Belize's case is ironclad. It is contained in Google, but also in the written work that you can find, whether it was done by Bianchi, whether it was done by Hudson, whether it is done by Lauterbach. All these things are published. They are not hidden, so that the Belize case is known publicly, the Guatemalan case is known publicly, and all the opinions are published. And all of them suggest that Belize's case is ironclad. One aspect of it I will particularly refer to. There is clear precedent at the International Court of Justice that once borders are established, no matter what happened to the treaty that established those borders will remain, no matter what happens. Belize has 3 treaties that articulate our borders. 1859 with Guatemala, Britain, 1931, and the 1893 treaty between Mexico and Belize. So those take care of all our terrestrial borders. The only area in Belize where we didn't have any specific delineation or articulation of the boundary was in the sea. That still has to be resolved. If you cannot resolve it by agreement, you will have to have it resolved either by the ICJ or UNCLOS. So all those information are in the public domain.
While you mentioned, Minister, that it's ironclad, I still believe that there is always a worst case scenario. What could be the worst case scenario for us?
Litigation risk.
Yes.
There's a difference between litigation risk and legal opinions, and I think what the question is, a legal opinion can tell you that you are going to win. A litigation risk is what is the worst that can happen.
The worst case scenario, well, from a legal point of view, the worst case scenario is that they may make some pronouncement with respect to the maritime areas that we may not be expecting. That is what the legal opinion and the legal advisors have articulated. The worst that can happen if we go to the ICJ is that there may be some articulation by the court in the maritime areas that we are not expecting. That is the worst in terms of a legal risk. That is what our legal advisors have told us. Am I correct, Alexis?
That is exactly right. But what we ought to bear in mind too, that we talk about litigation risk, and there's always a litigation risk. But as the minister said, all the advice we have gotten points to the fact that our territorial integrity cannot be touched for the same reason that the court has repeatedly ruled in favor of boundary treaties. Once a boundary, always a boundary. And with respect to the sea is entirely right. But there's a risk too of not going, and perhaps we don't spend enough time looking at the other side. What is the risk of going to court? There is a litigation risk. The risk of not going to court. There is also a risk of not going. And those things have to be brought to forward and discuss them. Discuss both. And that's where you look at the pros and the cons of the two things.
Minister, we have an online question from your nephew, Lennox Lam. He says, Guatemala is clearly disrespecting the UN General Assembly resolution by opening an embassy in Jerusalem. Why do we expect that they will respect a decision of the court, which is a branch of the UN?
The assumption that Lennox Lang is making, I don't think it is relevant to our discussion, to tell you the truth. It's really a mischief question. The special agreement between Belize and Guatemala was one in which the Guatemalans said very clearly, just like Belize, we will abide by whatever decision the court comes to. That is a specific provision in the agreement. They will abide by it. Now we can only go on the good faith of the Guatemalans. They will abide by it. I tend to believe people, you know. May it well be because when I give you my word, I keep to it. As a man thinketh, so is he. I believe that they will be honorable and that they will abide by it. That's my position.
Okay. All right. Do you have a question that you want to get in before?
Not really. I wanted to thank you guys for the opportunity today. But for us, I think the education campaign is a two-way thing, and we've had a lot of back and forth about it just now. But I think those who are in the position to educate themselves ought to carry the education campaign further than just themselves. If you're forming reading groups to look at what's on Google, particularly the referendum unit website has uploaded almost every scholarly article written. Am I correct, Ambassador?
That's right.
And so you see articles by Assad, you see books, you see many other sources. But I would caution the government that 10 months is not a lot of time, and we're down to 10 months now, pretty much. An education campaign is not possible in frantic conditions, so we are behind time for a formal education campaign. Having said that, forums like these are extremely useful, and I commend Channel 5 for that. And I think organizations who can organize anything that allows for education in all opinions and all facets. If a Belizean walks into the polls on April 10th next year, fully educated on the matter, then the decision will be made to the best of their ability. Right now, I think the Belizean public is nervous, in part because they're not confident that they have the best information possible. Yeah. And in actual fact, like I said earlier, the question also is, has to be dealt with, why is Guatemala so confident? That's part of the litigation risk question. There's always a feeling when you see your enemy on a battlefield looking confident, you have a question. It has to be dealt with, it has to be answered. And all the questions out there have to be answered. So Ambassador, time and tide waits for no one.
You're right.
And I think that we really need to, all of us as citizens, do our part. And particularly those of us over 18, and those who have a future to consider that's rather lengthier than some of us. But we have to think about this, and we have to read and read and read and educate ourselves and discuss, not argue, discuss. So thank you again for the constructive discussion today, and I hope it continues everywhere over the next 10 months.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So what we'll do at this time is actually take a very quick break, and we will be back. We have another segment to go, so definitely stay tuned.
You're heating up?
When someone you love becomes a memory, the memory becomes a treasure. Channel 5 introduces the Daily Obituaries. The Daily Obituaries will broadcast all death and funeral announcements and memorials to honor your loved one's life and memories. The Daily Obituaries airs on Channel 5 prior to the evening newscast, with subsequent repeats at 10 p.m. and 12 noon the following day. It will also be placed online on our social media platforms, all for a standard package fee. Celebrate their lives and memories with Channel 5's Daily Obituaries. Honor in life and reverence in death.
If you're looking for low-cost television advertising, have we got a deal for you? Advertise on Channel 5's Daily Classifieds. Channel 5's Daily Classifieds is one of the most effective methods for introducing yourself and your business to the community. Use our Daily Classifieds to recruit employees, promote specials, promote your products or services, promote a business opportunity, increase traffic to your website, and advertise items you have for sale. Let us help you save valuable time and money. Call us today at 223-0146 or visit us at our offices on Pony Drive to discuss how we can help your business grow affordably. Channel 5's Daily Classifieds. Advertise today.
And welcome back. It's important to know that some of the questions here represent the views or the concerns of persons out there. I want to jump us back in there as we're heating up with this question, because one of the concerns that we had during the break was the issue as to the timeline and this countdown. I want to follow up from the question from the youth, which is that majority of cabinet has said that they think that going to the ICJ is surely the only thing to do or the good thing to do. When you're speaking from a position of, I don't want to call it bias, but from a position of where you believe, your tone is different, your patience is different. Particularly if you are well informed of that view and well read on it, how does the government, in terms of being the leading stakeholders on the issue of the awareness campaign, how do they manage the difficulty of not coming across as being arrogant or looking down on the people as ignorant, and not sounding as if they're impatient with the views of the people that they are faced with on these education or awareness campaigns?
You direct that at me or at the
well, I think
whoever feels
most
answer.
comfortable.
Well, he could answer on behalf of
the government
himself and
government.
cabinet.
Sure,
But yes, the referendum unit is a part of a government arm, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But our charge is not to go and make a propaganda campaign. Our charge is to go out there and state the facts. Yes, help people understand how it is that we got to this point in history. It is a historic moment we are in our history, really. Belizeans will be asked to make a big decision, a very big decision. And to the extent we can, we need to help people understand how we got there and why. Now, some people will get offended by it because some people will be challenged when they hear some truths that they never heard before. And that is fine. So we have to be patient, yes. We have to be inclusive. We have to be open to hearing concerns. And to the extent we can, we need to reach everybody. And that is a great challenge. You are right, the time is very short. And it is urgent in that sense. We need to get this thing done
And
as
speaking,
best as we can within the limited resources we have.
speaking of urgent, let's consider this our last leg, right? Where we're in the sprint of the conversation. So let's get right to questions and answers so we can maximize the time.
Okay, in following up with that, I need to, as an educator, speak for the education community as such, or attempt to. And clearly, sort of refute the idea that the education community and the teachers have not been reaching out, because they have. And that's why there have been a lot of guest speakers over the past year, or even shorter, that have been invited to many of these institutions as such. I think the perception, and this is where the ministry is maybe suggesting that the teachers have not reached out, because the perception there, speaking to exactly what the ambassador said, is that they think that the referendum unit is simply an arm of the minister, in the sense that a referendum unit will simply push what the cabinet and the minister idea and their agenda is as such. And so maybe that's why their hesitancy to call on the referendum unit or the ministry to be their informers as such. And we can list a number of people that have been invited across the community. That's why Mr. Morgan, for instance, is invited to schools. That's why myself have been invited.
They've invited me several times.
And we have, exactly, and there are other people out there. And so I think we have to try to find a way, and that is still only formal institutions. We still are not touching the informal. And all those teachers there, as the thousands of teachers that we have, are still only touching the top of the pie as such. They're still, and so it's imperative that we be driven. This process, this awareness process, be driven by a much faster pace as such.
Let's have Paul Morgan.
Yeah, thanks very much. I want to just clarify an issue that has been floating around that I believe our audiences would like to understand. Are you familiar, and that goes to both of you gentlemen, are you familiar with Professor Shaw, Malcolm Shaw of the University of Leicester? Are you familiar?
Yes, I know.
Yes, okay. Well, he said that boundary treaties are in fact sacrosanct. They stand against all, with one proviso, except when the parties agree otherwise. And so to say that that boundary treaties stand sacrosanct would not be correct, except if you continue with the proviso, except if the parties agree otherwise. In the special agreement, we have agreed to put our borders up for grabs. That's what we have agreed to, determine the boundaries of our country. So when we do that, don't you think, this is the question now, don't you think that we have rubbished away the provisions of our 1859 treaty?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. What Malcolm Shaw was referring to, that a boundary stands unless you agree to another boundary. We have not agreed to another boundary with Guatemala. The only boundary that we have with Guatemala is...
That's not what he said. He said, unless the parties agree otherwise.
Exactly, unless we agree otherwise to another boundary.
So you have to agree.
Both of you have to agree. Otherwise, what the special agreement provides is for both countries to go to the court. Guatemala will state a claim.
Correct.
Yeah, that claim has changed over the years, which is why we had to put any and all claim, so that we don't have to come back again. Some people say, we're going to put all of Belize at risk. The reason is that Guatemala over the years has changed its position over what it claims, and we don't want to have to go back to the court. So this is a one-time and done, a final definitive settlement.
Minister, there's a online question from Aria Lightfoot, and she asks, which attorneys are representing Belize if we go to the ICJ?
Alexis, could you kindly tell him?
Well, we have a law firm called Freshfields, Brookhouse, and something else. It's a long name, but it's one of the biggest law firms in the world. And the key lawyer is one that was recommended by us. In fact, the firm was recommended to us by Sir Eli Lautopact and his team when we realized in around 2006, 2007, when the facilitator's proposal failed, and we gave the Secretary General the authority. In 2005, we gave the Secretary General of the OYS the authority to make a recommendation that we should go to court if he sees that we have exhausted the whole negotiating process. Sir Eli, who was getting advanced in his age, said, you know what, I can't handle this by myself. If you are going to court, we need a firm to handle it. So we got this firm. The lead lawyer is Ben Juratovich. He's been with us from 2006, 2007. And he is the core, and of course you have a lot of the toughest lawyers around. So there has been continuity in that respect.
Okay, as it relates to, yes, us deciding whether we go to ICJ or not, my question is, one, as it relates to, you indicated that we have a certain attorney or a certain lawyers that will be dealing with the case. Have we reached out to the other countries, to our Caribbean brothers and sisters, or even the other countries within the UN, to let them know the position as it relates to what Belize is in?
That's a good question, an excellent question. At every step of the process, we are supported by the international community. What we are doing, going to the ICJ, is supported by the United Nations, supported by the OAS, it's supported by the Commonwealth, it's supported by CARICOM, it's supported by the European Union, it's supported by the ACP. In truth and in fact, it is the European Union that is paying for the OAS office in the adjacency zone. And every single international meeting that we attend pass a declaration or a communique supporting the initiative of Belize and Guatemala to have the matter resolved at the ICJ. There is no international organization that opposes this process. The entire World International Organization support the process of going to the ICJ at this time.
They say never take advice. They say never take advice from somebody who does not live the consequences. When you say that these people support us, do they support us keeping everything intact, or they just support getting a resolution, whether or not that be half or the whole? Do they support? Good. What do they support?
He's raising a very good question. Let me just respond to him.
Sure.
The reason why the European Union, the OAS, the United Nations, and the others are so concerned and interested in seeing us going to the ICJ, because they know and live the horrors of what happens when you don't resolve border disputes peacefully. They have got to be trying to deal with thousands and hundreds of thousands of refugees, people who are hurt, people who are harmed, people who are killed. So when they see a process like the one evolving between Belize and Guatemala here, they have only admiration and they want to support it. This Belize and Guatemala really is exemplary in this part of the world in seeking to resolve this matter in such a peaceful way.
I just want to add that in regards to your question of the international community and internationalizing this whole issue, I know that at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, point 47 of the communique of country situations unequivocally supports Belize's territorial sovereignty. So everything, all the 8867 square miles is supported. I know the CARICOM also supports it. I cannot find information from SICA, but I know that the Commonwealth of 53 nations, which includes the UK, and all the CARICOM nations unequivocally supports Belize's full territorial integrity.
Right.
All nations of the world, through the United Nations, before we got independence and thereafter, have supported Belize's right to self-determination, sovereignty, and territorial integrity.
With the
However,
exception,
however, we have to bear in mind that the General Assembly of the United Nations is the political arm of the United Nations. Yeah. The legal arm is the ICJ. It has the same standing as a part of the United Nations as the General Assembly. But we have a legal problem, and legal problems are solved by juridical means. And that's why the United Nations have the court.
Ambassador, can I point out to you that what the point you just made is actually a part of the argument for people as to why they feel they should say no to going to the ICJ? Yeah. That if we have 99.9% support, why are we bothering with the 0.1?
Yeah.
Right. We have the political support, but only the ICJ is authorized to tell any nation, respect this boundary in terms of this is your boundary. This is what the law says. The political arm, the General Assembly, all of them say we want Belize's territorial integrity. But
so
what
we have the word,
integrity?
but not the actual action.
We
That's
need
what
the
you're
law.
saying?
We need certainty, legal certainty. We have legal certainty domestically under our constitution. But internationally, what body is authorized to tell the rest of the world this is what the law provides for?
There is a middle ground.
And that's where the ICJ
previous Ambassador David Gibson, I believe, was on the show, and he suggested that there is a middle ground, which is referring the issue as to the validity of the treaty to the ICJ. So you kind of test the waters first. How do you respond to
that option?
I have a feeling that he has been misunderstood in his proposal. As I understand it, he proposed an advisory opinion through the General Assembly. Should the referendum of going to the ICJ fail, or should we not be able to go to under the compulsory jurisdiction to the court under the special agreement? Getting an advisory opinion would be like a plan B or C if we can't get Guatemala to go to court. It's not as an alternative to going to court to settle the matter, because an advisory opinion will not settle the matter.
Does not fly in the face, however, of the position that we've exhausted all our remedies. If there's another remedy on the table,
it's not a remedy.
It doesn't settle. Option.
It's not, but it doesn't settle the case. An advisory opinion does not settle the case.
It's not an option.
It doesn't settle. If you want to settle it,
you have to go to court.
You have to go to court.
If I may, one of the important issues I want to raise in terms of the educational process is that unless the educational process is intense and is factual, you will have a confused populace with misinformation.
That is our greatest
and that is the greatest fear to the whole process. Misinformation, which can, or as we now say, fake news. So that now becomes the norm. And I think that this is so important for our people to really have the information that is relevant. Right. Because the political thing will always be there. Will always be there. But it's a matter of, in terms of leadership, what are the facts that should dictate our action that should follow? That to me is what is
similar thing. I would like to commend the youth leader for the research that she has been doing and for being able to tell us what, in fact, the international position is. That's commendable, and if we can get more people to do that. A lot of people have gut feeling and belief and well-intentioned, but completely misinformed. And that hurts the society when they disseminate their views.
Well, I'd like to use that opportunity to ask a question we were talking about during the break. If you were to look at social media, if you're to have conversations with people, we've done a couple of man-on-the-street interviews, and there are a lot of people in Belize who are saying absolutely not. No way do we go to the ICJ to fight for something that we know is ours.
Right.
This is, whether you call it a gut reaction or a protective mechanism of what is our own, a part of our own identity as Belizeans. How do you propose to undo all this fear that people have accumulated, not just this year or since incursion started in Chiquibul or Sarsoon, but since we were children and we heard not a blade of grass. How do you propose to undo that and take this risk at court?
I have been doing in relation to things like that. How do I bring comfort to people? I refer to the Bible. I always bring to the attention of the people the incident with the two women, two babies. One woman slept on the baby one night and stole the other woman's baby. Remember that one Padre? Could you finish it and tell us what happened?
Well, I think it's the natural mother was willing to sacrifice her child for life. And rather than having the child, the king was willing to divide the child in two. To determine, since both of you want the baby, just cut the baby. Solomon said, let's just cut the baby in two and give each of you half. And she, the real mother, was willing to give up that child.
She was afraid.
So, Father, in that scenario, Belize would be the mother that gave up the baby?
The mother was afraid. The mother was afraid. Obviously was afraid, but she was prepared. You see, the situation is this. I also use that as an example, and also to the good doctor will know that whenever a diagnosis of cancer is pronounced to anybody, that throws them into tremendous distress. Do I do an operation or do I not? It's always a tough decision. And you make your decision based on the advice of competent doctors. So it's the same situation with us. It's a tough decision. Nobody thinks this is an easy decision. But you are faced with a problem where you have people coming into your country night and day. And there is no way in which we can bring it to an end without taking this action by going to the ICJ, at least to put ourselves in a position so to do. It's not something that we are doing lightly. It's something that we are forced to do, and the options, neither of the options are happy ones, but we have got to go on the one that we think is going to cause us the least harm, the least danger. That is the position we find ourselves in.
Can I just quickly jump in?
Yes.
The term to use for people's reaction out there saying no is not fair. I believe it is wisdom. One, why? The voice of the people instinctively is the voice of God. But
not always true. Be careful with that. Be very, very careful, my brother.
No. The voice of the people is the voice of God.
Be careful.
Okay.
Be careful.
There's another issue that is critical. It is important that we do not demean the other side saying yes or no, and yes or no, by claiming expertise in that area. Like Padre saying, no, he's a man of the cloak, but I'm also a man of God. So, yes, I say the voice of the people is the voice of God. I don't say he is wrong. He might be right, but do not demean the other side. That's one of the things we have to do. Respect the other side. And so, with that, I will say that it is critical that we speak what we know as the entire truth, not cut it off, especially people who understand. I have heard too many statements coming out of the unit that is halfway true. I think you should extend the truth to the full extent of the information in order that people have a full understanding.
Well, when you say that, my good friend, you should call it out. Because I call you out when you said Malcolm Shaw said such and such.
Well, that's exactly what I did.
So what we could do in case when we have differences, we can have an honest debate, but you cannot ascribe,
for example,
just openly like that.
For example, Ambassador, you said on public TV, Plus TV, I listened to you saying that what we're going to the court for is for the court to tell us or to confirm our boundaries. That's not what the special agreement says. It says to determine our boundaries. I don't know if you understand. Confirm our boundaries means determine our boundaries. No, that's serious. That's not a laughing matter.
It's not.
That's not a laughing
what the
matter.
special agreement says at all.
Can we take a moment to talk about what it says?
Pull the
Go ahead,
special
tell us.
agreement.
Yes, you could take
To
a moment.
determine
We're going to
our
get it up
boundaries.
in the meantime.
She'll bring it up.
No,
We
yes.
can
the
do a
question
search.
is
Yeah.
for the court to decide on any
What,
and
if
all
any?
claims
Yeah.
by Guatemala
Yeah.
on the basis of international law.
To determine our
Well,
boundaries.
well, well,
On
well,
the
we're
basis
pulling-
of international law. On the basis of international law, Article 38 says very specifically, you look first at treaties, then you look second at customary law, then you look at principles. The first thing there is, Minister referred to it, we have 3 treaties that refer to our boundaries. So when you're dealing with it on the basis of international law, the court, according to all the experts you could speak to, will tell you that they have to recognize the boundaries as established on a treaty, unless, as Malcolm Shaw says, unless you have agreed to a separate boundary.
No, this didn't say a separate boundary.
But
It
that's
says
what-
otherwise. That's
So
not. No,
what
no,
otherwise?
It says, it says otherwise.
While we determine that,
I think there's a question
think
over here.
Doc,
Yes, 2 questions. You alluded to the risk of not going to the ICJ. There's a risk. And there's a, well, we spoke about risk and we spoke about worst case scenario. What's the worst case scenario of not going to the ICJ? Is it annexation, invasion? Is that what sometimes the minister seems to allude, that there will be bloodshed and violence? We have to say to the regular people like that, okay? We have to say unequivocal in fancy words, no? I really, as a regular, normal Belizean, would want to see the political parties coming together via it being that referendum committee, but make Mr. Johnny and Mr. Dean get together and say, listen, for this 0.1% of the time, okay, this issue that threatens our existence, let's come together and form a consensus, and this is how we're going forward. Because up to today, I hear that one, they say something, and the next one, they suggest and say something else. We need to have that clear. And when we go back to this education nonsense, when I tell you, no any good for you, when you ask me if no any good for you, and I want to tell you, go do your research, but I think you should have used Doni, that's not education about Doni. That the media suggests to you that you could take Noni. Okay, so what I'm hearing that ono go educate, but I say ono go. I think that part should not be here. It confuses people, because me regular Belizeans, we more than likely don't want political part, given our history. Please, please get politics out of this for this 0.1% at a time. You seem to be always want to distance yourself. Listen, either the technocrat, the high technocrat, and the politicians have the cabinet have the purview for say what they want. No, you that the advisor, only the advisor tell then a government already about when we do the minister of health, listen, this is how we are advising. And if you do this, on Cesar this from buy this drug, for example. So that I think our technocrats should be more forceful to the politicians for do the correct thing. Get politics out of this one big issue, please. Okay?
I'd like
You
to.
would know that you could only advise as a technocrat.
Well, then left your job, Pops. If you find that the politician, if you find that the politician, they do.
I want to.
This like this, and that's the way wrong with we Belizeans, you know. We give the politicians then too much power. We that the power, the technocrats, the top people in the ministries, okay, the people who have all of this knowledge. So tell them, if I am you and I say that this thing not go the way that I honestly think it should go, maybe I'll find somebody else for don't obey it.
Can I use that as a segue to another point, though? Because we spoke of, and I use it because as a doctor you know this. If I want to Google anything about any diagnosis, condition, I can find 2 sides of it. I can find people saying Noni is great for me. I can find people saying Noni is terrible for me. And if we use that as the example of people doing their own research as to how an ICJ ruling may potentially go, we have areas where we see concessions, and we have areas where we see confirmation, and that will fuel a Mr. Morgan going out to say vote no to the ICJ, or a Mr. Ross going out and saying vote yes to the ICJ. Only examples. Not supposing. I'm only using the example.
Quickly respond.
But, and that is the challenge. If we say to people, go do your research, and we look up ICJ and I say, oh, well, look, in this case, these people lost. And in this case, these people won. It can allow for people to confirm a no vote very easily if that's what they're looking for.
But that's the democratic process. There's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. That is a democratic process. And we will be bound by the decision of the people. You make your bed, you got to sleep in it. But that's a democratic process. You can't be more democratic than that.
There's also a psychology that people tend to confirm what they believe by more information. So if I believe that going to the ICJ should be no, when I'm Googling, I'm going to Google why no.
That's true.
And that is kind of to the antithesis of what an awareness campaign should be.
No.
But just to package what the good doctor is saying, and I think he represents the spirit and hearts of a lot of Belizeans out there. I think he's been speaking in a lot of ways that people who...
And with a very close relationship to Guatemala.
Yes.
I'm very grateful to Guatemala for my education.
Yeah, and so...
let me state that.
And so he does represent, in a very educated and articulate way, the hearts and minds of a lot of Belizeans.
That's an opinion that
it's an opinion. It's an opinion, and also I'm referring to what his opinion represents.
It's not only an opinion.
And it's a very well-respected doctor in our community. But my question is to follow up from something that the good doctor is saying, which is it that we, the leaders, are taking too innocent an approach to the awareness process? And let me be very specific in what I'm directing my concern to. This is too sexy an opportunity for persons who have an agenda, whether legitimately so or otherwise, in the political sphere, to not register their position. If I'm in a constituency, I don't know, maybe Pickstock, just to bring it home to the good minister, and I realize that in that area, the people in there are saying no to the ICJ. But the cabinet is saying yes, and the good minister is saying yes. Then my political campaign, if I'm a smart politician, will be focused on galvanizing my people to say, listen, associate the person with that view, and let's get them out. If both political parties are on the same page, me as a third-party candidate, I'm sure that will increase my percentage point a little. Belizeans, as the good minister said, are not fools. Are we discounting the political mischief or the political energies which come naturally from such a divisive issue as to whether or not we're going to the ICJ?
I am a politician that have been running in politics since 1993, 94. I don't know how many times you ran.
Never.
For how long? Well,
Never.
Well, I thought you were speaking from experience.
Never.
I
only studied political science. I only studied.
I thought you were speaking from experience.
No.
Actually, certainly, from my point of view, all we have been trying to do is to give Belizeans the information on it. And that's why when I started this program, I said, look, you could find everything that we will say to you in Google and whatever it is. And I also make reference to the fact that we could disseminate and educate people by using the social media and the like, because really and truly, my own experience has been that Belizeans are eminently sensible. And when it comes to their future, they are going to make the right decision. We have a legal obligation as a government to make the information available to them. And that is why we are doing that in the normal way in which we provide services for the public by having an arm of the government do it. That's all we're doing. We're not seeking to push forward no propaganda or anything like that. Just to educate people and inform them based on sound information and sound understanding of that information, because a lot of us have information, but many of us don't understand the information which we have. That creates problems. So what is our role? To make sure that we make the information available to you, we give you our interpretation of it, and we leave it to you to decide.
Minister, can I ask a direct question? Sorry, can I ask this direct question?
Yes,
Which, if I don't ask this question, I'd be a hypocrite. Minister, do you believe that you are part of the disruption from the conversation in terms of going to the ICJ?
If I believe that I am part of the distraction?
That there's some people, not everyone, but a few people.
Well, let me tell you something. From the time I got elected in 2008, there were those who were saying I should not have been a Minister of Foreign Affairs. Between 2008 and 2018, I have carried the Belize Guatemala process further than any person in the history of this country. Further than any person. And I have brought the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to a level of respectability and standard that it did not enjoy before we took it over. Internationally, I'm invited to participate at all levels in functions. So while I recognize very readily that I have some very serious critics locally, that is not the experience internationally. It's quite the opposite.
You referred to my opinion. You referred to my statement as an opinion. I would refer your statement as an opinion also.
You're quite correct. Okay. You're 100% correct. It is 100% correct.
But I'm not here to judge who am the best.
You're 100% correct.
The here from the two greatest political parties make this be a national issue.
And not a political issue.
Go on good, sensible brains like Mr. Elrington. Maybe they got some top people on the next side. Some said they're not experts like one Courtney or one Lisa Schumann or please resurrect Mr. Fred Martinez. Okay.
Many would.
Exactly. So please get one consensus by the beat referred as one referendum, but let we see representation and one public statement from Mr. Johnny and Mr. Dean side by side, the whole hand. Kumbaya and say this stuff for we position for national thing.
Literally,
okay. That's what me, one Belizean, want take to with top leaders. For be responsible enough for do it like that.
To put politics aside.
I want to hear the majority of cabinets, you know.
Okay.
My last question is how can we take out the political aspect out of this going around to our Belizean people?
Wow. Full show.
That's my last question. How can we take it out?
The good doctor has given us the answer.
Yeah.
I honestly believe that our political leaders, whether they are hoping that the next election will be called next day after the re-registration and referendum and form the next government, they will still have the problem. So our leaders need to be able to sit at the same table and say, this is about Belize. I have been disappointed, totally, with the withdrawal of Mr. Leslie from the referendum unit. He was an ardent, he was the PUP representative, but he wasn't there so much as a PUP as a Belizean with knowledge about what goes on. Until our leaders are prepared to put Belize first. Until our leaders are prepared to put Belize first, we will not lower this political temperature. And a good way to do that is the doctor have just given the honorable minister the answer to take to his prime minister, which I'm certain he will hear about if he have not already heard. That is where we need to go. Stop the pettiness, man. And who you like and who you not like. This is about Belize, and we have spent so much energy quarreling with ourselves. Guatemala has now beat us to the punch by saying yes. They know, I don't know, they know the political and diplomatic jargon. Until two parties agree, you will not be able to resolve the issue. Let's take an opportunity now by all leaders coming together and say, listen, I'm not saying you have to vote yes or no, but as a nation and as leaders, we need to go down this road. That's all I'm saying.
So we are talking about putting Belize first. And that's what we are hearing resoundingly. You need a mic.
Like when I said things against, well,
Can we
could be
just
perceived
clarify, you do
against
have
the-
a son that's Guatemalan,
that,
yes.
that could be perceived as adversary to the leaders. The difference is that in Guatemala, I would be met by authorities down there. Okay? I know they don't have that sole freedom of speech. Okay? I either get met downstairs right there, or visit to my house, or to my office later. For say, what are your agenda, Mabel? Why you they talk like that? Thank God, I believe.
Thank God.
I know I meet nobody. Okay? I know I meet nobody that may practice later, that may nothing today. I don't get text message, but
but everybody
no,
knows
that's
you
the
speak
difference
your
between
mind.
we and Guatemala
Yeah,
as it is right now. Today, 17th of May.
That's a good thing.
Okay?
And that's why.
And that's why I love Belize. I'm proud to be Belizean, and we want to resolve it as one Belize and not as one freaking PUP, UDP nonsense.
Okay. Before the language
Amen.
changes anymore, let's go to the language that we need to know. And I know we don't say it enough, but all this conversation is to go back to what we have on the screen here.
Right.
This is the question that was asked the Guatemalan. Actually, if you don't know, we timed this
same
1 month, 1 month later.
Right.
Guatemalans went to the poll to answer a simple yes or no to this question. On April 10th, that's what Belizeans will be asked to do as well. And if you want to go ahead and read the question for me.
Do you agree that any legal claim of Guatemala against Belize relating to land and insular territories and to any maritime areas pertaining to these territories should be submitted to the International Court of Justice for final settlement, and that it determine finally the boundaries of the respective territories and areas of the parties? Yes or no?
So Mr. Morgan was right.
No.
No, he was speaking of the special agreement. This is the question for the referendum.
That's what he's referring
Oh,
to.
this is what
That's what he was
you're.
referring to.
It is in the special
was right.
agreement. This is the question.
The boundaries.
He was right.
Finally? No.
But the
Whether they have any.
interpretation of what it says, that's
Yes,
where
but
we,
what
that's
he
where
was-
we
The law
differ.
is interpreted.
Yeah,
That's where we
what-
differ.
What he's looking at is the term.
Certainly.
Determined.
Yeah.
That was
He was kind of wording, and he's
Yes.
right in terms of the wording.
Yes, but what we're seeking
Right
to
in
do.
saying what?
I understand.
Go ahead.
No,
go ahead.
what he can defend himself.
Yeah, I was saying,
Okay.
it says here, determine finally the boundaries.
Right.
That's what I was saying. And a very simple matter. We are asking the court to determine our boundaries, which has already been established.
No, man.
that-
International law is what determines boundaries if you don't have agreement. International law.
Man,
So you
man,
don't,
man.
in your constitution, the fact that you have it in your constitution doesn't mean establish and determine
So we don't have
international
boundaries,
law. Because your neighbor is disputing it, it is an issue in international law.
Quick
That's
question.
why we go to the court.
Quick question.
Okay.
This is my final question.
Yes.
Mr. Ambassador, Mr. Minister, do you realize that there may be a situation here that might never be resolved? Can you live with that? We might have a situation where Guatemala will forever be claiming, even after we go to a court and the court says, yes, this is our boundaries. We are faced with a group of, an elite in Guatemala that is, I'll say it right up front, is a racist group of elites that subjugate their people to serious social discrimination. That is what we're facing. And I think as a government, we have a responsibility in our region to call them out internationally on this.
That is exactly the reason why we need to settle this finally and definitively as early as possible. We can't wait another 200 years. We can't, and that's the. If you feel that way about our neighbors, that is reason.
It's not our neighbors, the elite.
To. Well, they speak for their country, sadly.
25% referendum?
Yeah, the thing is that's their law, and that's that.
Guatemalans are good people.
The idea, but the idea.
You don't have a mic.
But the idea is
anybody, just don't go far.
Could you just
Mr. Elrington sit down,
Say
lives
what?
on 2nd Street. One day the neighbor get up and say, "Watch, I think mistake. Make this fence no business there. Let's go move it." You think I say, "Okay, I think we'll give you the benefit of the doubt." No, man, that's my. Okay, you don't carry me to court. That's your business. But I'm not willing for because I believe this is my land.
Okay.
All right.
So my point is this, that what we are seeking in going to court is to get an affirmation by the highest body under the United Nations that can determine boundaries, in the sense that they are the only ones who can tell Guatemala, this is the boundary, respect it. We're seeking to get our boundaries respected so that we could develop and work together with our neighbors to deal with the organized crime that affect us both along the border. In the Sarstoon, we have problem in the Sarstoon. We need to put those things behind us.
Ambassador, we've had an experience with consultations on constitutional amendments. It was the 8th or the 9th Amendment, I can't recall. 9th Amendment. That is our last experience with consulting and educating our people. In my opinion, it was not productive, and it became insulting at different points in time.
Let's hope we don't get to
yes.
that level here.
My question is, having that as our last experience with doing consultations or awareness, what are we going to do different in terms of getting this process in a different?
Well, it involves all of us, you know. It's not. It doesn't involve only government or just the referendum unit or the referendum commission. It involves all of us to make sure we are committed to having this civic and civil discussion, debate. Let's debate vigorously. I think we spoke about that before. Let's have that, but let's do it in a civil manner. At the end of the day, I think we can all agree what we're seeking is to ensure Belize's security, stability, but national security is foremost in our minds when we're looking to find a way to resolve this thing. Right now, we haven't reached the point that they think this is the only way to definitely resolve it. Mr. Morgan has other ways. Let's listen to him too. So the idea is not to crowd him out.
And in a respectful manner.
Yes.
Last
Based
point.
on that same statement that you made
question?
as it relates to, or the question as it relates to the 9th Amendment. And that's the reason why I'm asking, at what point can we take out the political aspect of educating or putting out the awareness? Because that 9th Amendment, that was the direction that it took. That there were political interference as it relates to PUP doing their own thing, UDP doing their own thing, despite the fact that both parties were in agreement in carrying out the awareness of the 9th Amendment. And I really wouldn't want that this repeats itself. So indeed, what is it that we can do different
So I believe
this time around?
that's one of the resounding points of this conversation. This is only one of many conversations you're having at this time, that people want to see this become a Belizean issue more than a political issue, and that there is a consensus in terms of what we as a country need to do from our leaders. We are completely out of time, but a very big thank you to all of you for choosing to participate. You had the option of not participating. Choosing to participate in this. Our viewers were chimed in. We tried to get in some of the questions as well. Hopefully we can be able to do it as well. Thank you very much, Minister. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you, Ambassador. And thank you as well to our representatives for coming in here and representing your respective opinions. We are going to take our final break now, and when we come back, we'll wrap up the show.